Available now. Link below.
In a stunning revelation, the Biden administration has all but conceded defeat to Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential race. With a single calculated move, they've exposed their deepest fear, the unstoppable force of Trump's promise to drain the swamp. The U.S. Office of Personnel Management's recent rule change is a blatant attempt to shield the entrenched bureaucracy from the inevitable upheaval of a second Trump term. It's a desperate act of self-preservation by the Dark Bureaucracy, a frantic effort to fortify their ranks against the coming storm. But as we'll uncover in this special report, their actions only serve to highlight the undeniable truth. The swamp is terrified of Trump, and they will stop at nothing to protect their power. So stay tuned for my final thought on this critical development in the battle for America's future. Now, folks, just like the Dark Bureaucracy is desperately trying to protect itself from the inevitable draining by a second Trump administration, many Americans are struggling to protect their finances from the rising tide of debt. With over $1 trillion in debt, it's clear that the economic pressure is as relentless as the swamp's self-preservation instinct. That's why I turned to National Debt Relief for a lifeline. They provided me with a customized plan to get out of debt with a free consultation and zero upfront fees. Just like Trump is having a solution to drain the swamp, National Debt Relief is a solution for those drowning in debt. Visit NoDebtWithGary.com for your free consultation and custom plan. Now, let's get back to our special report. The Biden administration, yes, through the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, the OPM, has finalized an unprecedented rule known as Schedule F in a desperate attempt to protect the entrenched federal workforce from the potential return of President Donald Trump. Now, this move effectively creates a barrier around the sprawling bureaucracy, with an estimated 50,000 federal employees, including those in critical positions at the FBI, State Department, and the Pentagon, potentially facing significant changes to their employment status if Trump were to secure a second term. Cassidy Hutchinson, a former White House aide who served as an assistant chief of staff to Mark Meadows during the Trump administration, well, she raised concerns about Schedule F in a December appearance on MSNBC, stating that it would allow Trump to fire up to 50,000 civil servants and replace them with loyalists. Watch.
He talked about implementing Schedule F, which is essentially a program where he would be able to fire up to 50,000 civil servants and replace them with loyalists.
Right.
If reports are accurate, there are also groups that are putting together databases of Trump loyalists to backfill those positions. So right then and there, we're already looking at a government that is going to be completely stacked with new government employees that aren't tenured and people that are inherently loyal to Donald Trump. That is not what our country is based upon. Now, that's one element of it. And then he's also facing 91 criminal indictments. He could still be under trial. The trial still could be underway in this next election cycle. Or they could be settled and his first act in office could be a self-pardon.
Right.
So we're looking at so many different angles of danger here. And I just think that the more that we talk about this, the more we amplify this, it's extremely important. But we also need to keep in mind that most Americans need to be educated on this and to open up the conversation about what this actually means and how it does very closely resemble a dictatorship.
Wow. She used to be in the administration. Now, the Biden administration finalization of the Schedule F rule on Thursday is a transparent attempt to undermine the authority of a future administration that aims to streamline the federal government and eliminate bureaucratic inefficiencies. By making it more difficult to reclassify federal employees into a category that would facilitate their dismissal, the administration has prioritized protecting the entrenched bureaucracy over delivering an effective government that serves the American people. Now, this move is not merely speculative. During his tenure, President Trump took significant action by signing an executive order that created a new category for federal workers known as confidential policy determining or policy making positions, which were classified under Schedule F. This transformative step would strip these workers of the long-standing protections that have shielded them from dismissal for decades, as evidenced by the former president's own statement in September of last year regarding his intentions. Watch.
Here are just some of the other things we must do with Republicans back in charge. We must pass critical reforms, making every executive branch employee fireable by the president, the deep state must and will be brought to heel. We will stop the radical Democrats from packing the Supreme Court with far-left justices.
Now, the Biden administration's finalization of the Schedule F rule is a tacit acknowledgement of their anticipated defeat to Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. Recognizing the inevitable, they are frantically implementing every possible obstacle to hinder the necessary draining of the bureaucratic swamp, a desperate act of self-preservation by the entrenched bureaucracy that realizes its days are numbered. The consequences of this move are immense, and as expected, the establishment's response was one of chaos and panic. Jeffrey Tucker, in a revealing conversation with Epoch Times senior editor Jan Yelkanik, shed light on the profound impact of Trump's executive order, which sent shockwaves through the corridors of power, highlighting the establishment's deep-seated fears and the transformative potential of this action. Take a look.
We should also remind people that as Trump was leaving office, I mean, he promised to come in and drain the swamp, right? But I don't think he understood how deep and wide that swamp really was. But by the end, he'd figured it out. And one of his last actions as president, he's passed a thing called Schedule F, which would have reclassified potentially millions of permanent government bureaucrats as at-will employees, so that at least the president, whether it was Trump or somebody else, would have some control over the personnel that presumably responded to him and whose actions for which he has to take responsibility. It's just a very reasonable reform. Well, I tell you what, Jan, at that moment, there was mass panic in the public sector bureaucracies in this country. That was 2 weeks before the November 2020 election. The executive order was called was to reclassify any public sector employee that was dealing with policy, interpretive passing of regulations that affected the American people as subject to some sort of oversight from the elected branches of government. Now, that is an entirely reasonable reform. In fact, anybody listening now is probably shocked that we don't already have that system in place. Well, we don't have that system in place. Trump tried to put it in place. Well, I tell you what, there was mass panic. And at that moment, they just got absolutely desperate. They had to kill him at that moment, just because of this executive order. And when Biden took office, within hours after the inauguration, he passed a new executive order repealing that one. So just to give you an indication of how important this is to them.
Well, indeed, and for those of our viewers who are interested in learning more about how this so-called Schedule F executive order worked, I have an interview some months ago with one of the minds behind the creation of it. So I'd encourage you to look that up. Just look up Schedule F on American Thought Leaders. You'll find it.
That interview, by the way, because that's what we used to call journalism in this country. You found the guy who wrote the order, you interviewed him at great length. It was a very candid interview, an extremely significant executive order, a very important point of civic reform in this country, and only Epoch Times covered it in any kind of detail. So it's funny to me because no other media outlet, to my knowledge, really focused on this thing, and yet to the administrative state, which is the fourth branch of government in this country, this was the most significant action, I think, of the entire Trump presidency, and partially the reason for the events that we've seen unfold over the last week.
Now, the establishment's palpable fear of a second Trump administration stems from the recognition that Trump is a genuine outsider, unbeholden to the special interests and lobbyists that have long held sway in Washington. As a disruptor, unafraid to challenge the status quo and take on the establishment, Trump poses a significant threat to the entrenched bureaucracy. His commitment to shaking up the system was reaffirmed by Donald Trump Jr. at the Turning Point 2023 Action Conference, where he reiterated his father's unwavering dedication to Schedule F and the ongoing mission to drain the swamp, underlining the transformative potential of Trump's return to power. Watch.
the Constitution. They care about furthering their power, their agenda, and ultimately getting on a board seat of big war or whatever it may be. That's why the D.C. Beltway, they don't produce anything, and yet they're the richest counties in the world, right? That's why they're so against Trump, because now he knows that part of it too, and that scares them more than anything. That's why he's going to implement Schedule F. You guys know what that is, right? Where you literally fire all the bureaucrats. Get rid of them all. And again, get rid of them all.
Get rid of them all. And that is precisely what they fear the most. They know that a second Trump term would mean a reckoning for the bureaucracy and long overdue house cleaning that would sweep away the cobwebs of inefficiency and waste that have accumulated over decades. They know that Trump would bring a businessman's approach to government, streamlining processes, cutting red tape, and demanding accountability from every level of the federal workforce. And that's why they are fighting tooth and nail to protect their turf. They know that their cozy existence, their cushy jobs, and their bloated budgets are all on the line. They will stop at nothing to maintain the status quo, even if it means defying the will of the American people. But their efforts are ultimately futile. The tide of change is coming, and no amount of bureaucratic maneuvering can stop it. The American people are tired of a government that doesn't work for them, tired of seeing their tax dollars wasted on ineffective programs and unaccountable bureaucrats. They're ready for a leader who will take bold action to reform the system from top to bottom. And that leader is Donald Trump. He has proven time and time again that he is not afraid to take on the establishment, to challenge the status quo, and to fight for the interests of the American people. He has shown that he is willing to make the tough decisions necessary to get our country back on track, even in the face of fierce opposition from the entrenched powers that be. So let the dark bureaucracy tremble in fear. Let them cling to their desperate last-ditch efforts to protect their freedom, their fiefdoms. In the end, their resistance will be futile. The American people have spoken, and they have chosen Donald Trump to lead them once again. And when he returns to the White House in 2024, he will finish the job that he started, draining the swamp once and for all and restoring the government of, by, and for the people. If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. It's time for my final thought. The Biden administration's desperate attempt to shield the dark bureaucracy from the second Trump term is a clear sign that they know their days are numbered. They're running scared, terrified of the reckoning that is coming for the bloated bureaucracy that has held our nation back for far too long. But their efforts are in vain. The American people have awakened to the truth, and they will not be denied. They know that only Donald Trump has the strength, the vision, and the courage to take on the swamp and drain it once and for all. So let this be a warning to the entrenched powers that be. Your time is up. The people have spoken, and they have chosen Trump. The draining of the swamp is coming, and nothing can stop it now. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Now keep up your quest for truth with this next news report. And if you found our channel enlightening, join the millions who agree with you. Tap subscribe. Thank you for watching the Next News Network.